All right, welcome into the Five Guys here at the Five Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. We got Alex Donno. You can follow him at Alex Donno. I think I'm actually in the tropical environment, although you're the one with the tropical environment in the background. Down in the Keys trying to find internet. Uh, we'll tell you about what we're going to do on our show here in a second. We appreciate you joining. As always, we're here every Tuesday and Thursday. We got a fun topic coming up for Thursday. We'll tell you about that. Today, though, we're just going to get into the Panthers specifically and what happened last night. We are sponsored here by our friends over at Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN or just go to betteredge.com/5reasons. Get $20 to play right away. What makes Better Edge different from the other books? Well, here there is no VIG, so you don't have to pay them for doing nothing. And the other part of it is you can find the line that you want. So you can see the Florida Panthers. They were 1.5 goal favorites yesterday. They cleared. Didn't look like they were going to clear for a little while. These empty net goals have been helping over the past couple of games. But you can go to Better Edge. You can play the NBA Finals coming up, obviously. Dallas trying to essentially stave off what's going to be close to an elimination situation against Boston as they go home. We've also got our contest that we run there before the rounds of every series, and we'll be back for the NFL on that as well. So go to betteredge.com, use the code 5RSN, and you'll get $20 to play right away. So, Alex, this team is on the verge of doing something really special at this point. And you look at how good they've been on the road, and you feel pretty good about them going out and getting a split. We'll talk about the greater context of all of it, but let's get into sort of the news aspect, which is the hit on Barkov yesterday, clearly a launch. Do you expect a suspension?
I don't see how you don't. And it's almost it's talking about this stuff. I'm of two minds with this, Ethan, because we know obviously hockey is a really rough sport, and the stakes cannot possibly be higher than we are right now. We're talking about the Stanley Cup Finals, so I don't throw around possibilities of suspensions lightly. And obviously, in the case of Leon Draisaitl, he's one of the two best players on the Oilers. At the same time, he may have knocked out one of the best players on the Panthers due to a dirty hit. We'll find out more about Barkov's status, but I'm not necessarily feeling great about him playing in Game 3. And I guess we'll just have to take it day by day there. So honestly, when you talk about and I've watched that hit probably 100 times, and again, hockey is a sport where there are collisions. It's very dangerous, but that to me looked like, and I know it's a split-second thing, but when you're talking about launching yourself, leading with the elbow right to the head, it seems pretty open and shut to me. That was a dirty play. I mean, I guess people can debate the levels of dirty, but that was a dirty play that could probably cost the Florida Panthers captain a game or potentially multiple games in the series due to injury that came with that. I hope it doesn't come to that. So, yeah, in the case of I think you absolutely have to talk about suspension for Draisaitl, because otherwise you may allow momentum to shift in this series because you allow a guy to get away with a cheap shot that may cost the best player on the opposing team a game or multiple games in this series.
Well, and hockey is a little different than the other sports in that it does seem like they take the injury to the other player into account when they suspend. So, in other words, they take the result into account. I don't really feel like that happens in the NBA. We've got from Soap 305, but they won't suspend him, and they may not. Now, you talk about dirty plays. There were like 4 from the Oilers in that game. Like it seemed like a combination of frustration and then almost like a design thing to take out the Panthers' best players. When there was one situation, look, and I know Tkachuk brings some of this on himself. Bennett does also, okay? But there was one sequence where McDavid got stoned. If you follow it through, first thing, Bob's best save of the night, in my view, was on the McDavid breakaway. But then McDavid ends up in the corner with Tkachuk, and he went up high on Tkachuk also. I don't know if a lot of people saw it. And there were a couple of his other sequences. Now, I know that people are mentioning the Ekblad play, kind of the chokehold. There was a lot going back and forth both ways. But I think we have seen consistently that the Panthers don't engage in this stuff. Like Boston tried to get them to do it, I think more so maybe than the Rangers did. And the Panthers, I thought their attitude last night, it was clear there was a conversation. We had Alex Baumgartner in the locker room, Caitlin Daly as well. It's clear there was a conversation before the media came in. that they were going to all say the same thing. Like, we're not going to focus on this right now. We're not going to get into it. We'll see what happens. But then Maurice really couldn't hide it in his presser, right? Like, it was clear that he's angry about it. And I do think, like, you have to take into account which player was taken out by the Panthers and how long he'll be out. Like, I think the NHL has to consider that, because if it's borderline, then you have to push. If Barkov is going to miss a game or two, then the guy who hit him, who's one of their two best players, needs to miss a game or two. Like, that's kind of where I'm at with it. We'll see if it happens. It may not. Now, look, I think the Panthers can win without him. There's enough depth on this roster. We really haven't seen Reinhart play to his capability of late. I think there are others who have not, stepped up quite to the same degree that we've seen at certain stretches of the regular season. It's harder without Barkov. But let's be honest, the power play has been a disaster regardless. I mean, they got the one goal from Rodriguez yesterday. But they can win. They can win without Barkov. All they need is a split. But I would like to see the NHL, particularly if Sasha's going to miss the next game, I would prefer to see the NFL suspend him for one game. I think if he does it, this series may get out of control, honestly, Alex.
Yeah.
It feels like the Panthers were kind of holding their fire after the game to see what the NHL does. And if the NHL doesn't end up suspending him, I wouldn't want to be McDavid in Game 3. I wouldn't. Because they can't do anything with him. I know he's only had 1 point, but I mean, he's a tremendous player. But they will do what they can, I think, to get him out of the game.
I agree with something else you said. Like, even if the NHL, and it wouldn't shock me if they don't suspend Draisaitl. Obviously, I don't think anybody would be shocked by that. And I do understand it's a difficult decision to make, given how high the stakes are in the NHL Finals and the Stanley Cup Finals. But I still think the Florida Panthers can get it done here, even if Barkov has to miss a game or two, God forbid, because again, this team has so much depth, and Ethan, even some of the Panthers' top players aren't really playing as well as they should right now. Like, I'm surprised we haven't seen more of Matthew Tkachuk so far in this series, but he's obviously got that potential to break out. And if someone like he isn't, you see a guy like Evan Rodriguez scoring 2 goals in the game last night. Like, this is the deepest team that the Florida Panthers have ever had, and it's one of the it's the deepest team in the NHL right now. I don't know where they would rank historically among NHL depth, but this is a very, very deep Stanley Cup Finals team, so they might be able to get it done without Barkov. Now, he, of course, he's the best two-way forward in the NHL, so he provides so much on the defensive end as well. But the Panthers defensemen have been so strong in this series, and just the tone of physicality that the Panthers have set, and really negating, for the most part, the Oilers' speed and keeping guys like McDavid and Draisaitl in check has been super impressive. And this team has shown the ability that, even if one of your stars are either missing a game or maybe not, playing as well as they could be, that you're going to have guys in the third and even fourth line that are stepping up and making up for that. This team is incredibly deep.
Well, they've got good players not even playing. Ryan Lomberg get on the ice. Like, they have guys who are fan favorites who essentially we call our podcast the fifth line. I mean, they essentially are on the Panthers' fifth line. They cannot get on the ice. Panthers have a very good backup goaltender who led the league in goals against, who we haven't seen in the entire postseason and haven't needed to. It is, and we'll get more into it on Thursday, but it really is a remarkably constructed team. This is, I don't want to jinx it because people will get upset if we do this, but this will rank with the very best of the South Florida championship teams if they win. Like, this is not a fluky situation. We can talk about the Marlins in '97 and all the vets that they brought in and all the money they spent, and obviously in 2003 with the young players bringing in Pudge for the 1 year. But this feels more organic, particularly than the '97 Marlins team. Zito built this thing from pretty much scratch. I mean, he inherited Barkov and Bobrovsky's contract, but Bobrovsky was not considered at the time to be a good contract. I mean, people were booing him 2 years ago. And again, you look at the roster that he's constructed where you can say, okay, look, Tkachuk had some moments yesterday. I haven't seen a lot from Reinhart in this series. Verhaeghe obviously, stepped up a little bit in game 1. But again, with Rodriguez, you're talking about a 30-year-old. He's bounced around the NHL. There was concern, how are you going to replace Duclair? They got, a jack of all trades type player. You got Tarasenko playing on one of the bottom two lines most of the time. It's really, it's just tremendous what he's done. I mean, there's just no way around. I mean, I said, today, I legitimately forgot the Marlins season is still going on. I was like, oh, what month is it? Because I was like, are they still playing? These franchises were considered to be in the same place like 3 years ago, like literally the same place. Like both of them kind of struggling to get, with some young players, but struggling to kind of get traction. And now you have one that may be winning a championship that has, former Heat greats banging the drum and the Dolphins coach banging the drum. And you've got another one where literally, like, if they didn't have the Bad Boys premiere over there the other day, like, I don't know that anybody would know that season is continuing. It really is, to put it into some context. It's been tremendous work. They're going to win this series. I think it's been pretty clear from the beginning they're the better team. They can win with fewer shots or they can win with more shots. I don't really think it matters. And if you take Draisaitl out, like, the reality is, if you look at the depth, and you mentioned it, of Florida's roster versus if you're trading Barkov from Draisaitl, honestly, even though Barkov's better overall, you'll take the trade because Edmonton doesn't have guys to replace. Panthers will put Bennett up on one of those lines and handle some of the power play responsibilities, and they'll be okay. And so I just think that's where we're at. All right, we'll talk about where this series goes. I know we got Alex Baumgartner in the chat. Alex, if you are there, I can't switch over and see the text that you just sent me, which I think were tweets from George Richards and Colby Guy. So if you want to share those in the chat here, please do so. I do want to introduce a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. They've got some big Panther promotions going on right now. Okay, so check those out. This guy, our guy Jose, he was at the game the other night. They're getting all the great Panther stuff. So check them out, jerseys305.com, and here's a little bit more about them.
Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick for the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We've got a great new sponsor that fits with us perfectly. It's called jerseys305.com. That's jerseys305.com. This is your home for dead stock and vintage jerseys from the Heat, Panthers, Dolphins, Marlins, and the other local teams. Their mission was born from a passion for wearing jerseys of the old styles and the past players. Jerseys 305 aims to make every fan stand out from the crowd with unique pieces that you don't commonly see anymore. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, but not today. And Jerseys 305 was created by the fans, for the fans. They're diehards just like you. In fact, they're probably listening to this episode right now. So check them out, Jerseys 305, their partnership with 5 Reasons Sports, celebrating with a 10% discount on the next purchase using the code 5 at checkout. Unlock your exclusive savings on the entire vintage collection.
Ethan, so I have from George Richards, this is probably what Baumgartner was sending you, Paul Maurice talking about Barkov. So Maurice, who's, I guess, just addressing the media at 12:30, George Richards tweeted, Coach Paul Maurice says Barkov not worse. That's a good thing. If he continues to progress, could be in good shape. George, though, adds, Maurice not giving too much away, but it sounds like a concussion the way he's talking. I asked if Barkov would be on the flight tomorrow or potential for game 3, and it sounds like concussion protocol. Now, they do have until Friday for game 3, Ethan, but if he is in concussion protocol, then I'm not feeling like it's too promising for Friday, maybe for game 4.
Yeah, the other issue is, and I'm glad George asked that question about the flight, because flying with a concussion is not ideal. And I wonder if we find out if he actually makes it on that trip, or maybe has to take that very, very long flight separately at some point, maybe to make it for game 4. I do think that it would be helpful if the NHL makes its decision relatively quickly on Draisaitl if they're going to make it, because I do think that could influence the Panthers' way of going here. Obviously, you want to protect him with concussion. I'd feel a little bit of resting him in game 3 if Draisaitl's not playing, which, again, if that's the case, that probably should be what it is if Barkov's going to miss game 3. There's just, look, I've looked at it, like you said, 100 times. He launched. Like, there's no question about it. Like, this was not a hockey play, okay? He launched into him. It looked intentional. It wasn't caused by anything. It wasn't retaliation or anything else along those lines. It didn't look like Barkov created the situation. This was a designed effort to take out arguably the Panthers' most important player. Like, you can't get around that. I think the fair thing here, honestly, is Draisaitl misses, as Alex says, no nonstop flights to Edmonton. They need to PJ him over if he can't take the the charter. Well, and Alex knows because he's taken those flights to Edmonton. Godspeed to you. It's a tough call. I mean, look, I don't leaving him home for 2 games is not ideal, but if that's what he needs to rest, that's what he needs to rest. And I'm not as familiar with the NHL's concussion protocols as I am with the NFL, but it's not something that you take lightly. The good thing is they got the 2 wins. I do think they're capable of winning one of these 2 on the road, even without him. Bob can certainly steal a game out there the way that he's playing. This is, to me, the best. I mean, the best Bob has played in terms of positionally. He's been terrific. Like, you just look at him; he's in the right spot all the time. He's playing with a ton of confidence. I did not feel he was the best goalie on the ice in a couple of their early series, but he clearly is right now. Even though Skinner's been, I think, a little better than advertised. So, Alex, I feel good about them winning this thing. It would be a monstrous shame if they end up losing this series because a guy took a cheap shot at their best player.
Yeah.
That's where it's at.
Yeah, it would be tragic, but like you said, even if, God forbid, if Barkey can't play for the next 2 games, we don't know that, but we're thinking worst case scenarios. I still think they could win one of these next 2 in Edmonton, and this team, to me, it's just I respect the fact that, and I think this goes for most professional sports. You have to learn how to win in the playoffs. And I believe in incremental steps. We've even seen it with the Heat. I mean, the first year Shaquille O'Neal was down here, they were in the Eastern Conference Finals. They lost to Detroit before they came back and when they won the championship that year. Even LeBron's first year in Miami, we all remember how that finals series went. They learned how to win the following year, and I think the Panthers had to learn how to walk before they could run. A couple years ago, they learned how to win in the regular season. Last year, they learned how to win in the playoffs. This year, hopefully, they can learn how to get it over the finish line in the final. So I believe they can get it done with or without Barkov, but God, I'd rather have him in the lineup, Ethan.
Yeah, I think they all would. And the topic on Thursday, we're actually going to hit on this a little bit, and obviously we'll have a game to talk about as well. But one thing we will get into is I was looking back since 1993, since you had the 4 teams, I'm not including Inter in this, but the Marlins, the Panthers, joining the Heat and the Dolphins. And we're going to take a look at how many years somebody other than the Heat was the best team in town. This is a little bit different. It's going to be a little embarrassing for the Dolphins, I think, in the greater context. But the way we're going to do it is because we do know, obviously, that the basketball and hockey season split over a year. They split over 2 years. And, football seasons are supposed to, but for the Dolphins, they typically don't. They die in December. But we're going to take a look at those 4 because it just will show you kind of how dominant one franchise has been in this market over the past, pretty much ever since Pat Riley came in 1995. And this may be the first time that there is a worthy, as the Roosters are telling me to get off the show, that there may be a.
Wow.
I'll show you here. See, we got one right here.
That's awesome.
I picked my daughter and I picked up a friend, I guess, on our trip. It is kind of remarkable. She's right there looking at it. It is kind of remarkable that we finally may have a team that could supplant the Heat, not in overall popularity, obviously, but in being sort of the model franchise. Like, they have done a lot of things the way the Heat used to do them, and we'll get into that as well. We talked about that on a previous episode, so we'll handle all that. Obviously, if you want the news on this Thanksgiving Day, if you want the news on the Barkov situation going forward, follow our guy Alex Baumgartner at abaumgartner91. I'll be back for Game 5 if there is a Game 5. Final thing, Alex, before we go, if there is a Game 5, who should bang the drum? We've had McDaniel and we've had Morning. Marino's done it in the past. Who should it be?
I'm going to show my bias in this answer, but I feel strongly about it. I want Mario Cristobal to bang the drum because I just don't, and obviously that's something.
No.
Why not?
No. He'd forget what time to do it. He's not good at clock management. He'd call a timeout he doesn't have. Don't do it. If you want to pick a UM great, like let's get Ed Reed there. Like let's
okay.
How about JJ? I was just at the Big Chill yesterday. How about JJ?
I would like to see JJ or Michael Irvin. I'd like to see.
Oh, Michael Irvin would be fantastic. You know what? We should. I mean, again, hopefully it doesn't cover this. I mean, on the Heat side, it's Spo or Dwayne, right? At this point, like I don't know that Dwayne would come in for that. But they've had a bunch. They've had Haslam. They've had Zoe. They've had Dragic. So we can see.
Has Jimmy done it?
He has not. He did wear the Kachuk jersey last year, but I don't know.
Right.
He's probably on the south of France right now. I'm not really sure. But he could do it if he's promised an extension. I mean, on the Dolphins side, has JT done it?
Not that I recall.
He's a season.
He'd be a good one, and that would kill two birds with one stone because he could represent the Canes coaching staff while also representing the Dolphins.
He actually had the best offseason of the Canes coaching staff, so he loaded up on that line, as you know. You know what, JT? I've seen JT at many Panthers games. He takes his kids. I think JT is a good choice. I think that would get. But honestly, I think Zoe did the best job. I was looking at all of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He not surprised that he scared the drum into submission. All right, Alex, we appreciate it. We'll be back on Thursday. Follow our guy Alex Baumgartner and Caitlin and myself. We'll have a bunch of Panthers content over the next few days. Have a good one, everybody.